Right, good morning. So I'm John Seddon, I'm Head of Transport and Innovation, and there's various members of the team around here from Coventry. I have to say, this could be a relatively quick 10 minutes, because a fair bit of what I'm covering has already been covered by Martin, by Councillor O'Boyle, by the two Sarahs. So ultimately, hopefully it shows we are actually joined up on the same agenda at Coventry City Council, working to the same goals around tackling air quality, improving active travel, improving health, and making sure we've got a sustainable transport system for people using the network by whatever mode. And I have to say, I've actually worked several local authorities in England and Scotland over the years. Been at Coventry 18 months, and it is, I think, the local authority I've worked for, which has been most forward-thinking in terms of transport technology, looking at new opportunities, working with people like National Express to explore those funding opportunities and really sort of move things forward. Quick touch on the challenges that we're faced with. This diagram shows the planned growth within Coventry over the next 10 years or so. So this is what's in the local plan for ourselves and our immediate neighbours, because some of those housing developments, such as Kings Hill at the bottom of the slide there, are actually in Warwickshire, but functionally they form a part of Coventry. So you can see there's tens of thousands of houses planned, tens of thousands of jobs on employment sites, some of those more sustainably located than others in terms of being next to the railway station at Friargate. But the key challenge for us is, out of all that, that will generate a lot of travel demand in the city, to and from the city, and from the city to Birmingham, to Warwick, to Leamington, to Nuneaton, and so on. So it's really how we get all that travel demand managed in a sustainable way, and how we make it sure that the transport network is far more sustainable. Nadia touched on the air quality side in her presentation, and yes, we've got significant challenges there. We've alluded to them. I think the dialogue with JACU has kind of stalled at the moment because of a certain event in 5 weeks' time. We'll probably then pick up again towards Christmas. So at the stage we're at, we still don't know whether our strategy to turn those red parts of the network, which exceed NO2 levels in the current modelling, will be turned blue through the strategy which we're promoting, and greening the fleet is a key part of that, or whether it will be through a clean air zone, which is obviously the approach taken by Birmingham and others. And that's part of the dialogue which will continue once a new administration is in place at Whitehall, and whether it's the same minister or not, we shall see. Nadia also showed that, and I think the key point here is, picking up the point that Martin was making, it's not all about buses and taxis. Those often get the blame. They're highly visible, along with the lorries fleets. They must be churning out all the pollution because they're big vehicles with big engines. Well, actually, no. Holyhead Road, which is our worst hotspot, left-hand side there, more than half the NO2 emissions are from diesel cars. And a large chunk of the rest is from diesel vans. I think on Foles Hill Road, the proportion of buses does come up, and they actually do come into third place on Foles Hill Road, which is why that's one of our key corridors for electric buses. But in terms of Foles Hill Road, even there, it's almost half the emissions are coming from cars. So we do need to actually tackle the private car and make sure that we've provided owners of electric cars with the easiest opportunity to charge. So in terms of developing the culture, we've heard about a lot of the funding, and it's a pity OLEV aren't here because we could be dutifully grateful for them for the amount of funding that they've given to us, whether it's for the bus scheme, whether it's for the various charge point schemes we've had on residential areas and for the taxis within the city centre. We heard last week, one of the last announcements of the current government, we've secured another £258,000 for the next phase of on-street residential charge points. That will see another 70 charge points going in on top of the 90 already installed in residential areas surrounding the city centre, and we'll take our sort of levels of charge points across the city up to around the 250 mark. So, you know, there's a lot going in there. And some of that, the rapid charge points you'll see, there's a few on Little Park Street just outside the council house here. You'll see those, they went in aimed at taxi market, but actually those are used mostly by private cars coming in, private residents coming in, and to the city on business or for shopping. So a lot of the sort of infrastructure is going in there, is in place, but we're not, let's say, resting on the laurels there. We want to actually extend that out further, make it as easy to charge your electric vehicle as it is to fill a petrol or diesel vehicle with fuel. And when people don't have to think about it, they don't have to think about how many apps they've got on their phones or how many cards they've got in their wallet. They just go, tap, fuel, go, as you would at a petrol station. That's the first main battle that we need to overcome to get electric car ownership sort of really sky high. The other battle is the headline cost of actually purchasing them, and I think the sort of stats are, the estimates are that by about mid-2020s, 2024 perhaps, your electric Golf will cost the same as your diesel Golf or your petrol Golf. So we'll get there with that. In terms of the charge points, the blue are the ones that have gone in to date. The amber are the ones which will be in by March next year. And there was 39 around the city. The only issues we've had with a few points there are around exact location, fuel supply, power supply to them and so on. But broadly speaking, those are the rapid charge points and fast charge points which are going in around the city, which will allow people to have their top-up charge when visiting Coventry. Focus on the city centre, obviously, but key clusters around at places like the hospital, the Rico Arena and so on, to sort of the places where people will like to visit. In terms of the on-street charging, those are the areas which I've either already had on-street charge points in or in the next round that are coming through. So you can see Coventry's got fairly dense Victorian street layout around the city. No off-street parking, but a lot of those areas are people, we know that there are people there that want to have an EV but are just worried about charging them at home. We're not going to be like colleagues in Hampshire, for example, saying, just trail cables over the footway, it'll be fine, because we know it won't, and we know who's going to get the blame when somebody trips on those cables. It will be us at the council. So we've been very much working with the providers to make sure that go in safe, that they don't take up pavement space, and working with the communities to reassure them that they're not nabbing their parking space just for it to be left empty, that there is a need for these. In terms of the bus routes, those are the key ones that went in the bid. Obviously, we need to talk through some of the logistics with Martin and colleagues as we get nearer the time for looking at the route spacings, the range, and so on. But broadly speaking, it's the corridor out to the hospital, which is, was alluded to by Nadia earlier, is one of our air quality hotspots, and also Falls Hill Road, which is one of our most dense bus routes. But we will be looking at Holyhead Road in particular and other routes, and working with National Express and colleagues to sort of try and get more of the bus fleet electrified as we go through. And in terms of charge points, we want to make sure that we put in service-style charging hubs. Some of those are going in places like Dundee at the moment, but we want to make it more of a service station experience, have them at strategic locations such as out by the A45, A46, so that long-distance drivers can make a stop and a top-up charge, as well as local drivers going out there. And we're sort of, the key thing there is establishing business cases, making sure there's funding available to actually do the work. And in terms of some of the future work, so I say we're looking at very much the electric city in terms of buses. We're working with colleagues at TFWM on how we do electric car clubs. Mobility credit scheme, we're working with again with TFWM on that, using government funding to actually put in a scheme where people can trade in their car, get travel credits rather than credits for a new car. And that includes use of car club, etc. So we're very much looking at ways to make our travel more sustainable and provide our residents with those options. Very light rail, very much recommend speaking to Jess and colleagues out at the stand there on the proposal there. But this is about decarbonising our transport network. We're doing what we can in terms of buses and taxis, but we recognise we need something which actually attracts people out their cars more readily on some of those key corridors. We're never going to be able to afford the metro system which is going in say Nottingham or West Midlands or Edinburgh or wherever. But we've got an affordable solution here. We believe we're in the R&D phase. That's what the vehicle looks like. It's under construction at the moment as a prototype, which will then go into testing towards the tail end of next year and into 2021, and join City of Culture, which I'm contractually obliged to mention City of Culture at least once in any presentation when you're from Coventry. Part of City of Culture will be bringing the vehicle over here so that people can actually see it as part of our technology exhibitions, which will run alongside the actual main cultural events themselves. And hopefully people will find this even more cultural than some of the events taking place as part of the main programme. But it's a fairly significant investment just on the R&D phase, because this is stuff which hasn't really been applied in the context of on-street running. The technology is quite simple. The vehicle will be battery operated, therefore we don't have overhead wires. It's running on its own, not quite steam anymore, of course, its own juice. And from that point of view, we need to take advantage of that lightweight technology, similar to what we heard about earlier. Lower the weight of the vehicle. That means we can have a lightweight track system. And that means, crucially, we're not digging up the roads like they were for 4 or 5 years in Edinburgh to actually relocate every gas pipe and water pipe which is in the street. We're able to actually put the track in an easier manner. And crucially, if utilities need to come in and do something on the road, they can dig up the track fairly quickly and replace it very quickly, because it'll be a modular system. So that's the aim. And a system which actually can ultimately operate as an autonomous system is the key thing in terms of the vehicle as well. So we're working with local operators on that. So the track, very much a modular form, a bit like the old sort of Hornby train set, but obviously a bit more science and technology need to go in to make sure that it's actually safe and fit for use. And we're working with colleagues over at Dudley. They're building a test centre for light rail, and we're sort of working with them to put the test track in place, which will test these to destruction and make sure that they actually do work in the right context. And that's the centre itself, sort of, which is going through the planning phase at the moment. A couple of upcoming events if you want to hear more about Very Light Rail and opportunities. We've got a business breakfast on the 21st of November. And so as the slides are going around, then you'll be able to get the links to these to register for that. And that's very much aimed at people who might be part of our supply chain for Very Light Rail in the long term. And then a Very Light Rail conference held at the Wright University. Notice that 28th of November, big day for conferences in Coventry. So you've got an active travel choice in the city centre, or Very Light Rail choice out to the University of Warwick. So pay your money, take your tip, take your chance. But we're very much promoting the concept of Very Light Rail at that. And then colleagues from TFWM are in the room, sort of saw Chris around there. We're very much working on, say, Coventry and the West Midlands as a living lab. Sort of, as one of the things I like about working here is we're up for it. Anyone that wants to come and test a bit of kit on our roads, we'll find a way of doing it. This is sort of a project jointly with TFWM, also with Birmingham and Solihull, and a lot of other partners as listed there. And it's about future-proofing our network, or sections of our network, so people can actually come test their technology on our network and actually know that they'll be able to have the monitoring of how their cars are performing, how the technology is performing. And so that's underway in terms of the design of the scheme. That's really just a rather fussy slide, which you can look at your leisure when the pack goes around, which sort of shows the broad principles of the comms equipment that goes in, the cameras that go in on the roadside, to allow manufacturers to properly test their kit. Obviously, we're linking in with the regional 5G agenda as well on that, which I think my colleague Paul might be touching on next.